I just think it's very suspicious that all of the sudden we hear this from all these Democrats. Let's play it, Will, because I don't remember hearing this during the January 6th committee.
14th Amendment, Section 3 is pretty clear. If you engage in acts of insurrection or rebellion against the government, or you give aid and comfort to those who do, you are disqualified from running. It doesn't require that you be convicted of insurrection. It just requires that you have engaged in these acts. It's a disqualification from holding office again. And it fits Donald Trump to a T.
The arguments for disqualification are quite strong.
Section 3 of the 14th Amendment is a radical and sweeping proposition.
Donald Trump is disqualified just as if he were running and not a born U.S. citizen, or if he were running and he were 24 years old.
Under that section of the 14th Amendment, the language is specific. If you give aid and comfort to those who engage in an insurrection against the Constitution of the United States, it doesn't say against the United States. It says against the Constitution.
I really think that this legal theory is something that we really need to concentrate on. Instead of concentrating so much about on the indictments, I mean, I'm very excited about them myself, but I definitely think 14th Amendment all the way and just prevent it from running.
Oh, I'm very excited about the indictments themselves, but the 14th Amendment all the way. So they have no trouble. So maybe then they'll get indicted for election interference. Yeah. I mean, think about what they're doing here. There's lots of issues that you could litigate and legislate surrounding the Constitution. But telling Americans who they can and can't vote for, it seems about like the most un-American thing to do. The Secretary of State of Maine or New Hampshire decides, I don't like Donald Trump. I'm just going to remove him from the ballot because I think what he did was wrong. And that's enough without adjudication? He hasn't even been charged with insurrection or rebellion. I think what it shows them is interesting. The 14th Amendment's been around a long time. It's like they just stumbled upon this today. They haven't read the Constitution ever before. I mean, you have to wonder. I know the Democrats don't really usually care about what's in the Constitution unless they think it will benefit them. And so this time they found the 14th Amendment, Clause 3, and they think, well, suddenly we could just have secretaries of states take Trump off the ballot if he is the nominee for the Republican Party, because we're going to self-disqualify him without any adjudication. The 14th Amendment, Section 3, it's called the Disqualification Clause, and it says basically someone that served in office of any state, and includes the executive, which means it includes the president, shall have engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the United States, or given aid or comfort to the enemies thereof, they cannot serve high office. Now, the interesting thing here, there's not even a charge by Jack Smith that Donald Trump did that. Yet, you now have this drumbeat going, and I'll tell you where it's going, folks. It's going from the Democrats to the democratically controlled states. Because if you can remove Donald Trump, or anybody else for that matter, off of, say, 10 states and maybe one or two swing states, well, then the election's over if he's the nominee. It sounds insane that we're ever talking about it, but how this comes to fruition in a dangerous way is you don't need this in all 50 states. No, you just have to do it in 6 or 7. Yeah, 4 or 5 states, and it's over. And you've swung the election. Done. You've interfered with everyone's vote. The liberal scholars are saying, no, wait a minute. It is self-executing, meaning the secretaries of state who determines who goes on the ballots, or the board of elections of that state, can make that determination themselves. I believe that is unconstitutional for 2 reasons. It takes your constitutional right to vote away from you. It also violates due process. The fact that the Democrats just today have decided how easy this is, really, they never even talked about this a month ago. Where was Adam Schiff talking about this 3 months ago? Donald Trump's been leading in the polls since he left office. He's been the leading Republican candidate. Here's what's happened. I don't remember anybody talking about this. I'll tell you why it's happened. The indictments didn't do it. The indictments increased the former president's support. This didn't do it. They're going to the next thing because, as you said, 4 or 5 states, you end up controlling the entire election cycle. We're talking about it because it's like Adam Schiff just figured this was out in the Constitution. And these liberal scholars, you wonder, like, I don't remember Lawrence Tribe putting this forward, or any of these others who have spent their whole life doing constitutional interpretation. It's like they skipped over the 14th Amendment, this provision, until yesterday. And suddenly they found out it's there, and they're going to tell you it 100% applies to Donald Trump because they don't like Donald Trump. And they don't think you should be the deciding factor whether he's president. They think they should decide, right, if you get to decide whether he's president or not. What they're really taking away the power, it's not so much from Donald Trump. It's from the American people. It's saying you're not smart enough. You can't be trusted to choose who should be the next president of the United States.
It sounds absurd because it is absurd. And I don't think that was ever the intention.
But it would not be that hard for them to get 5 or 6 Secretary of States to do it.
No, unless we push back on this very strong, that this itself would be an insurrection. That this would be, again, an insurrection against the American people. This would be a rebellion against our Constitution and our system of government by taking away your ability to choose.